Good morning, my name is Rain Russell and this is WBCR Bloomfield College Radio. Today I will be representing Inkululeko, a nonprofit organization that works to help underprivileged students in South Africa advance educationally from grades 8 through 12 to get into university. I will be interviewing the President of Bloomfield College, Dr. Marcheta Evans, on Black Lives Matter, but more specifically, Black Education Matters. So how are you?
I'm wonderful, absolutely wonderful. In the midst of craziness, though.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that are happening in the world right now that, I'm trying to be realistically optimistic.
That's good. It's very hard. It's very challenging. I feel like when you're used to being in person with things and
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's truly my personality. I'm an extrovert. I like, seeing, touching, hugging people, and not being able to do that. It's like, oh my God, it's driving me crazy.
Yes. So I do want to open up and ask, what was school like for you growing up, and what challenges, if any, did you face?
Oh my goodness. Well, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Alabama primarily. And so I grew up during the time of the 1960s when a lot of civil rights issues were going on. Very similar to some of the things that we're still facing, unfortunately, in 2020 right now. A lot of social injustice, racial unrest. And so, being a young Black girl in Alabama in the South, just navigating that world, knowing that education was critically important. My grandmother would always tell me, and you probably heard me say this before, that education is the key. And once you get your education, nobody can take that from you. They can take your house, your car, whatever else. But once you become educated, as far as freeing the mind, that is what the answer was. And it gives you the opportunity to, based on your education, to get an opportunity to get your foot in the door. Mm-hmm. And so make sure you get that education and hold on to it and get as much as you possibly can.
Yes. I feel like your experience is probably way different than mine, being as though that you grew up in the South. I can only imagine what school was like as far as the people.
Yeah, and I actually graduated from University of Alabama, which I don't know, again, knowing your history, where they would stand in the door and wouldn't let Black students in. Again, just dealing with the racial unrest, small population, the University of Alabama. When I went in my doctoral program, I was only full-time Black student in there, let alone Black female. So, you just do what you have to do.
Yes. I commend you strongly. Do you believe it is harder for students, specifically students of color, to find motivation in trying to complete school when they are constantly given the short end of the stick?
Well, it's always dealing with the resiliency. And if you lived your whole life of knowing you have to fight for something that you shouldn't have to fight for, I think you have that resiliency to push forward. That in spite of, I'm not going to let you deter me from my goal. And then also having a support system in place that will, urge you to continue on as well. Unfortunately, I don't think we have as strong of a spiritual connection that we used to have in the community in regards to leaning on our faith and having a recourse. We're also dealing with the financial aspect of pursuing higher education. It's expensive. Mm-hmm. Even with getting all types of financial aid, you still have to come out of money, out of your pocket. And I talk about that constantly with the administration here, because our median family income for our students in New Jersey is a little over $30,000. And so you think about that in regards to a student trying to pursue higher education. It costs a lot of money for the family, and it's a lot of sacrifice, even with loans and everything else too. So trying to find ways to help support our students, whether it's through work-study programs or other work employment internships, practicums that are paid, that's extremely important. So, finding faculty and staff that are culturally competent to work with our students, knowing half of our students too are first generation, meaning they're the first in their family to go to college. How do they navigate this environment, and making sure here at Bloomfield College, being a predominantly Black institution, Hispanic serving institution as well, that we're cognizant of these demographics in supporting our students, where again, we're empowering them, we're advocating for them, and we're giving them the tools. We're not just feeding them, we're teaching them how to fish, so to speak. And so that's important.
Yes. I think that I seen that a lot more. Like, I recently I studied abroad to London.
Oh,
and
awesome.
That was extremely different. It was the first time I ever flew somewhere. It was the first time that, I was outside of the United States, and I was by myself, but I met so many different people there with different backgrounds, and majority of them are first generation. And so for them, it's like extremely important, or they feel the pressure of they have to fulfill this by all means necessary.
Right.
So it's like, I'm blessed to not have that burden, but it's still like, it's still a need, it's still a desire, it's still a want. So I just...
So tell me about yourself. What's your major? How far along are you? I know this interview about me, but I like that's the social part of me.
So I'm a broadcast journalism major. I'm a senior, so this is my last year.
Oh.
Yes.
It's good, but great.
Yeah, it's like, frightening. But yeah, let me think. What else?
So you did the study abroad program?
Yeah.
Was that through your broadcast journalism program, or was that through? How long was that when that happened?
Was last semester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Last year semester, like spring, when
the spring. Yes.
And you had to come home. Could you finish it?
I finished it online, which was even harder because the classes that I was taking over there was definitely classes where you would need to be physically there, because the way that they teach is a lot different. The language, as far as the words that they use and how they spell and the grammar, is all different. So it was very hard, but I completed it. I passed everything. So
okay.
Yeah, but definitely was very different experience, and it allowed me to appreciate a lot of things in the United States that I didn't think I would be appreciating.
Right.
But yeah.
So you live here in New Jersey?
Yes, I live in Camden.
Okay, I'm still learning. Coming from Texas last year, so figuring it out.
Okay, that's not bad though. How is Texas?
Texas, believe it or not, I love living in Texas. I love the diversity. Living specifically in San Antonio.
Okay.
It was nice, but I was ready for a change, and so I did a big change and moved up here to New Jersey.
Was it a lot different than Texas, or you think it's pretty much kind of the same?
People are people, and I'm a people person. So no matter where I go, I've done a lot of international traveling and just work and across the United States from east to west and north and south. And for me, people are people. So what's odd was, though, I think I heard more Spanish spoken here than I did in San Antonio.
Really?
So just into this, the diversity of languages. Even though San Antonio is a minority city. And the 7th largest city in the United States. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I would expect there to be more Spanish speaking there.
Yeah, I would too. But, for a long time, the culture and the language was squashed. They didn't want people to speak Spanish. They changed their name from Maria to Mary, from Jorge to George to, whatever. Again, just kind of that assimilation piece was really a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was just kind of sad on one end. You have a whole generation of young people and older people, too, as well, that don't know the language.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yep. Well, that's how sometimes some people are in the United States, right? They want you to speak English. Really? You don't even speak English.
Right. That's crazy.
Not the Queen's English anyway, being having gone to London.
Right. This is definitely... English is not even... It's basically made up from the original English. So technically, we're not even really speaking properly either.
Nope.
That's crazy. But I am glad to have finally meeting you. I feel like we never really crossed paths while I was at school anyway. But it is good to meet you now.
Yes, definitely. All your classes online?
Yes, unfortunately, and it's driving me insane.
Okay.
But so in South Africa, the school system largely revolves around where they come from, like social class and skin color. So have you experienced or seen this within certain communities in the United States?
Oh, most definitely. And just so you know, I've actually done some work in Africa, in the country of Malawi specifically, working with their education Ministry of Education, dealing with cultural literacy in the development of some books, children books, and making sure, again, that they connected with the community. And so their language was Chichewa. Okay. And so again, working with the teachers to develop that cultural connection has always been critically important to me. So you mentioned with social class and skin color, that's around the world, believe it or not. I started working on a book at one time called "Am I Still Too Dark to Have a Pretty Baby?" And what it dealt with, again, how we perceive beauty along the whole range, even within the Black culture. That the fairer your skin, or whether you have good hair or bad hair, and that whole thing, or you blue black, you're so dark, those kinds of things, and it impacts relationships, it impacts value, it impacts career opportunities. I mean, it goes all the way, even within the culture itself, as the perception of that. And so, yes, in answer to your question, we see it. And, I have 5 kids, and 4 of them are daughters and a son, and they range as far as hues all the way across, from being very fair to probably my complexion, I would say. I won't say dark, but, about my complexion. And I've seen how they've been interacted with. Most of them have natural hair, which is a journey in and of itself, and the perception of that. And, them saying, "Mom, you got to get off that creamy crack." I'm like, what? Getting my hair permed. And so, just yes. It is still unfortunately, a part of our community. And even with this president we currently have, the divisiveness that is in place. You have those that are the 1% or the wealthy. Middle class is really, really suffering. And then those, the lower class, is getting less and less. So, as far as health disparities, we see it in healthcare, education, job opportunities all the way across.
Yes, I have so many experiences, especially when I went away, where skin color and class definitely played a huge part in my interactions with people, and you kind of don't notice it as much in the class part when you're in the United States, I feel like, because you're so used to whatever range you're in and you're used to the people around you. But when I went away, that was their premise, is class, and you clearly seen the difference, you felt the difference, and people treated you as such, and it really opens your eyes to the fact, like, is this really going on? Like,
yes, definitely. Skin bleaching in India is $1 billion industry, because again, it's based on a caste system, which is that class, whatever, and the fairer you are, you got the higher jobs, the higher pay, and the darker your skin was, the more service manual positions. So
that's so sickening.
Yeah. Oh yes.
But so I do want to open up a fun fact here.
Okay.
So,
I like fun.
So a Department of Education report showed that in South Africa, less than a third of students finished grade 12 by the age of 18. However, Inkululeko helps bridge the gap for learners to be able to complete school from grade 8 through 12. Have you seen, or are you a part of, any organizations in the United States where they mirror the same tactics with staying with kids from one grade to another to help them advance?
Well, not recently, because I've been in higher ed, and mainly my students that I've taught were doctoral students. Those that are going getting their PhD. But I've taught, I always say, from the cradle to the grave. I've taught elementary, middle, high school, all the way up to students getting their doctoral degrees. I was what's called a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and I worked with students that had disabilities that were from grades 8 into post-secondary that needed extra support to get into higher education and finish and get their degree and then get a job, you know. And so I've done that in the past as well. We're currently working with a group out of Rutgers, Newark, called Braven. We actually just signed a contract with them this fall. And they work with students as well that are in post-secondary with mentors and different types of support systems and workshops to support them all the way to, again, getting that job at the end in the field, in the degree that they got, you know, their degree in, which is important.
Yeah.
I always say, you know, we want you to get a job with good insurance and hopefully in the field in which you got your degree, you know. So I've worked historically with groups that provide that type of support, and I know the importance of it. I work with different TRIO programs, whether it's Upward Bound, Talent Search, Student Support Services, McNair programs, trying to get students into, again, graduate programs. So, yes, my background is in counseling. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
You know, being a counselor, this is what I do strategically to try to get people to be successful.
Okay. So I do want to ask, you know, to piggyback off that, what age group do you think needs the most support when it comes to school?
All of them. I will tell you all of them. Elementary, I will tell you, laying the foundation for success. You got to start early, and having been an elementary school teacher. And I will say, even with the third grade, you know, learning multiplication tables, I still have a problem with 8 times 7 or 7 times 8. You know, and here I am. What is it? But, you know, again, getting them to have, well, it's kind of like the self-fulfilling prophecy. You can do this. You're just as smart as, and in some cases, smarter than. And having people to believe in them. That starts early on, because if they have a defeatist attitude of I can't, even as a young child, then it can follow them all the way for the rest of their life, believe it or not. So that's why I say all the way through. Middle school, students are hormonally imbalanced. Seriously, they're crazy. You know, again, they want to be a baby 1 minute, they want to be grown the next. In high school, learning how to navigate high school and just, you know, sometimes the cruelty of middle school and high school, of how we treat each other. So learning good relationship skills, finding the right college for them. And I'm curious as to how and why you picked Bloomfield College to go to school, right? But finding that right environment, because I've had daughters to go from an institution, one daughter graduated from University of Texas that has almost 60,000 students. And then I have 2 daughters that went to HBCUs that had about 1,300 students, you know, and some in the middle as well, you know. Right. So tell me, how did you end up at Bloomfield?
It's a funny story, actually. I applied to a lot of different schools, and I got into a fair amount. But my concern was trying to find one that I could afford. That's number one, because some of the schools that I got into, they weren't offering enough aid to where I would be able to pay, you know, the rest, if need be. And I wasn't even paying Bloomfield no mind, to be honest. I was trying to go, at the time I was trying to be a vet. I wanted to be a vet. In my head, I was like, I'm going to be a vet, you know. Right. So I was looking at schools based off of that. And I was going to go to this one school. But then, I was set on it. My mom was like, this is too far. You got to travel up this mountain, you know, all this. Right. And I was like, okay. And then at the last minute, I was like, I don't know what to choose. And then somehow I ended up at Bloomfield because they ended up offering me pretty much enough aid to basically cover everything. So I was like, I might as well just go there, and that's how I ended up there. At the last minute.
Campus? You live on campus and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I normally do, because where I live is kind of, it's like 2-3 hours away from Bloomfield. Okay. So it just made more sense to stay on campus.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was wondering how she ended up at Bloomfield. Yeah. And then in broadcast journalism, that's a big difference from, maybe your degree in biology and chemistry or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But at the time, I was following kind of what other people had placed into my head. I wasn't thinking about like what I really wanted to do. And I think that kind of plays a part too when in school, when you're trying to find motivation or when you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. Sometimes your family can impact you differently and sway you different ways, and you get all mixed up instead of following what you want to do. So I think that
finding your passion. I always tell my daughters, they would get upset with me. It's like, Mom, what's your major? And I'm like, oh no, I will not be one of those parents who say, well, my mama said.
Right.
Find something that's going to sustain you in the lifestyle you want to live. Because I'm like, when you look around this house, this is my lifestyle that you are enjoying. So, when you get grown, you can say the same thing about you working in your passion.
Right. I think that's very, very important. So, how have you been doing with the pandemic? I know we talked a little bit about it before, but how have you?
It's really been a struggle, to be perfectly honest, on a lot of different levels, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. But being the president, you have to, again, maintain a certain level of positivity. Of that we're going to get through this. We've lost a couple students, one for sure, that I had a relationship here. I was an older, non-traditional student, and that was difficult. Working with the faculty, the staff, and the students again as well, trying to navigate this whole new world in sports technology, doing classes online. For some of our faculty, they didn't even really use their emails. So let alone trying to teach a class online. So that's been a growth process. And then some of our students, they need high touch. Mm-hmm. They need to be where you can get the tutoring, or I can eyeball you or ask the question. So, helping people try to move through that as the leader, as the president, staying in touch, dealing with the fears of safety. Because even now we have classes, we have some face-to-face classes, some hybrid classes and online classes, and being here and being present, even in the midst of this, our enrollment is down. That's something we have to deal with because it has a direct impact on services and cost and finances all the way across the board. But we want to make sure that we still give quality education to our students. And so, how do I navigate that? So I'm up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, praying and, asking for some divine intervention, and also, trying to do things concretely and realistically to make sure that this institution thrives, not just survives.
Yeah. I was wondering, I know how a lot of students are feeling about, online learning, and if they are on campus dealing with that, so I was wondering how it is on the receiving end as being, staff or faculty. So
it's been rough. It's been rough. Just trying to navigate it all, and sitting down and visiting with students and talking to them, and them dealing with their own family needs as well. A lot of our students have multiple siblings, and how they're having to manage those, or family members that maybe don't have a job. Or grandparents that have been ill, and again, dealing with resources. It's been a struggle.
Yeah, definitely. I think resources definitely was one of the main things that a lot of people were struggling with, because also most of the people that I know that attend Bloomfield, they're coming from backgrounds where, they don't have much of anything. Right. And so with returning to school, if they're completely online, is a lot, especially if you are, let's say, if your parents are working and you're the only one who can sit down with your siblings and teach them whatever. So it's like a lot plays into online.
Right. Are you an only child?
No, I'm not, but I'm the only child in my house.
Okay.
So.
Last one standing?
Yeah. But I do have, I have a godchild now.
Oh, okay.
So it would be, for me to return to campus would have been pretty bad in the sense of I wouldn't be able to, I would have to detox for a while before being able to interact, and yeah.
The whole quarantine thing.
Yeah. So it's bad. But since we're talking about the pandemic, Inkululeko has migrated to virtual learning. And they had shipped necessary supplies to students. They also have incorporated mental and emotional support to students and staff. In what ways have you seen education institutions help, or have you helped give access to students during the pandemic?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. We've done everything from giving PPE, where we had extra masks and other things that were part of our nursing program. So when the pandemic, did that, we distributed to the local hospitals and some of the first responders. I had what I call my weekly vlogs, where I don't know if you remember, I would send out these video things about what was happening on campus. That was dealing with kind of just the connection, the mental, psychological piece of trying to keep people upbeat.
Yeah.
We've engaged with the JED Foundation, and the JED Foundation works with individuals that are having mental health issues, specifically those that may be suicidal. And as a result of this, we're seeing a lot more suicidal ideation because of the stress and depression related to the pandemic. So making sure that we have virtual resources available for our students. We also have tried to do, at the beginning of the year, have more on-campus fun activities to keep people here on campus and not going back into their communities, to help where you don't have to do the quarantine and, be isolated or whatever, but still you're not stuck in your room.
Right.
You're having fun. I feel like I'm the mask police, though, half the time, because it's not a chin guard. It's supposed to be over your nose. And so getting students to realize that has been our journey. So, we try to cover it all the way across the board. The quality of the education, we distributed Chromebooks for those students that didn't have the technology, making sure they had Wi-Fi access. So that was the practical, technical part of it. Then also working with the faculty too as well to make sure they know how to teach online. So we had a whole series of professional development opportunities for faculty this summer to help prepare them. So, we've gone at it a lot of different ways, not only from the student perspective, but also giving support to our faculty and staff, because they're dealing with their own issues as well. So when we have small kids, they're dealing with stress, depression. This is not how they're used to teaching, a variety of different things. So you have to kind of look at the system and go at it holistically.
Yes. I was working with EOF over the summer to help with the freshmen, the incoming freshmen. So it was a struggle for a lot of the teachers to figure out how to work Zoom and figure out. So it was like interesting kind of to see that, because you would think like people know how to use these things, but everybody is in different age brackets and they use things differently. So a lot of the times the students was helping the professors figure it out.
You know what I found too, though, Rain? It's not just the age bracket, because some of my older faculty actually are very astute as far as technology.
Okay.
It's really exposure.
Yeah.
Some of the younger students that weren't used with the technology, them, I would think that you would be more tech savvy, but they weren't, because it just wasn't really in their world.
Right.
With using Zoom. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. But it's very strange of a time, but
it is on so many different levels.
Yeah. So it's just crazy, literally. But do you think that the pandemic has made school harder for underprivileged students to stay motivated to do homework, classwork, or comprehend lessons virtually?
Yeah, and again, I think it depends on the prospective student, to be perfectly honest. It is a different world. The younger generation, they are more in tune to technology. But I think with our students, I mentioned earlier, I think they require or want and need higher touch, more communication, more of the hybrid.
Yeah.
Balance it, where it works for you. You have the convenience now of doing the work with this asynchronous or synchronous learning that you're having. And so that varies. So yes, harder on one end. I think it's better this fall than it was in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
We had to make that shift, so quickly. People are getting into a groove, but I talk to students every day in the cafeteria, and that they miss being in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine.
Yeah.
I know personally I'm somebody who I learn, like I need to see it. I need to like interact. Yeah, like I can't, it's very hard to try and learn virtually because it's not retaining at all. So I had like some conversations with my professors about it. Like, I don't know how we got to get this together, but it's not clicking for me. So I do understand on that perspective of trying to get it together, because it's hard to like be motivated when you feel like you're just not grasping what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
But
you got to figure out ways to engage the student to make that connection, and that's important.
Very important. Very important. So as an educator yourself, working in the school system, have you found that students of color struggle to connect with you or with other teachers due to their background? Or when you went to school, did you have a problem connecting with teachers and lessons they taught?
No, not really. Again, with my personality, I think, I connect, I think, pretty easily with people.
Okay.
My husband says I'll get off a plane and know everybody's life history, whatever. And everybody just wants to tell me their whole life history just because of the conversation. And then when they find out I'm a counselor, then everything starts flooding out, So, for me going through education as a kid, I had challenges. I had great teachers and I had awful teachers. And I learned from both, what not to do and what to do. And so the teachers that pushed me, I think our students have the same. I think our students have some great teachers and not so great. One of the things I try to work with, moving into administration, is getting my faculty to understand that I have very little tolerance for you mistreating the students, not challenging and pushing them. But if you mistreat them, if you're hurtful to them, if, whatever, that's unacceptable. And so that's one of the reasons, too, that kind of led me to move up the academic realm to end up being a president. So I can have what I call positional power. So students such as yourself can see me, a Black female, versed in this and versed in that or whatever, and say, well, if she can do it coming from her background, then there's possibilities and hope for me, because it's not like she's so special, so.
Yes. When I found out that you were going to be the president, I was very like, I don't know, it just took me by surprise, because it's not something you see like in your day-to-day. Like, you hear about these different women in high positions and, but it's just like when you see it, when it's like in your face, you're like, oh, wow, like, yeah, it's very inspirational.
Well, good. That's what I'm here for.
But I would say, in my background specifically, coming from the environment that I live in, I had to deal with a lot of teachers who, like, they don't live where I'm, like, in my city. Like, they live elsewhere. And so they're coming in and they're trying to teach people that, you're in this urban community, you got all this stuff going on outside of school. Then you're supposed to come in and learn from someone who has no idea what you're coming in with. And I think, it changes how you see, you interact with people differently because of that. And then you take that with you when you go to college. And sometimes you'll get people, I feel like, in college where they're the same, but then you also get them couple of people who are, very different, and they're willing to, like, I understand where you're coming from. I may have a similar background as you, but, we're here, we're getting it together, we got this kind of vibes. So, yeah. I think it's interesting, very interesting. But I don't think I had too many issues like that at Bloomfield.
Oh, good. Yeah. We do need more diversity in our faculty and staff.
Yes.
Unfortunately, and that's one of the things that I'm finding. You know, we want to say like we're an HBCU, but we're not. We're PBI. We just need that more because there are no HBCUs in New Jersey.
Right.
And so, you know, just trying to figure out what we can do. We're the really only 4-year, predominantly Black institution in the state.
Oh, wow.
And so, you know, how do we connect with our students culturally? You know, we're Black and brown, Latinx, about 90% of our students. So.
Yeah. Everybody always says, like, when I first was coming to Bloomfield, they're like, this is basically like a HBCU. So I'm like, it's crazy because when you start taking classes and so you're just seeing a whole bunch of just brown and Black people, and then you have like some other people, but it's mainly, so it's like, oh wow, you were serious.
Right. Are you in a sorority?
No, I was looking into it prior, but you know, I ended up going away, and then this is kind of my last year, so you have the pandemic going on. But we'll see. You know, there's still graduate school.
Yeah, there is. And once you get your degree, you can join a graduate chapter.
Yeah. So, how do you think school systems can improve for students of color?
Well, again, being culturally competent, kind of like we were just talking about as well. You know, even though you may not necessarily live in a certain area, can you relate and really understand? Mm-hmm. And from an empathy perspective, not sympathy. Meaning you can really understand and walk in that individual's shoes. You push them. You still have high expectations for them, but you give them the support systems in place to help them be successful. Mm-hmm. Once you get a taste of success, that motivates them. You know, it's like losing weight. You may need to lose 50 pounds, but you don't start with the 50. Can you lose a half a pound? You know, and build up to it.
Right.
You got to have support systems in place for that, and just move them forward. And that's what the educational system needs to do. Not baby anybody, not cause them, again, not to learn for themselves and just pass people along mm-hmm. without having the accountability, and that's extremely important.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So I do want to leave on this final question of in this interview so far, have you learned anything different before you came in?
Yes, I've learned about you. You know, I've learned about your experiences as far as studying abroad, where you are, how you got to Bloomfield. I didn't know that before this interview. So thank you. It also makes me sad because I have to see you through this medium.
Yeah.
Hoping that before May gets here, that our paths will definitely cross.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you come see me when you're on campus.
Yes.
So I have an open door, you know, and hope I won't be in a meeting or a Zoom meeting or whatever. And our world will get back to some similarity of, we'll never be the same again, I think, as far as the normality of it. But whatever our world is like in the spring, I'm hoping I'll get a chance to visit with you face to face.
Definitely. I really hope so. But I feel like when 2021 appears, I feel like we'll be at a better state, hopefully, in terms of like we already experience, you know, the turmoil of everything. So now it's like now we're just grasping how to move forward. So I feel like we should be able to have some face-to-face or more face-to-face interactions by then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, because we're doing it now. You know, before in March and April, I wasn't going anywhere. You know, I'm like, oh, heck no. And so now, you know, just getting out and about, you know, going to the Poconos, doing different things, trying to check, you know, the world out.
Yeah.
Using the safety of the mask and the, you know, the sanitizer or whatever we have to do. That's kind of the world we're in right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wish you the best.
Yes.
Does it conclude our interview?
Yes, it does. This is a really good conversation. I learned a lot about you and your background, other than, what you read.
Right.
So,
right.
I think that I'll definitely leave here motivated.
Oh, awesome. You just made my day. This is a good day now. Well, thanks, Rain.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Rain Russell, representing Inkululeko. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Marcheta Evans and learned a lot about her life, about my life, about Inkululeko, about South Africa, about the United States, about their similarities. Thank you for tuning in.